Get going. All right, well, thanks and welcome to the RPL meeting for March 8th here. I will call the meeting to order and have a recommendation here that the agenda for the March 8th, 2022 Township of Wellington North Rec Parks and Leisure Committee meeting be accepted. And I'll say that Deputy Mayor Milne moved that, and Dan, you seconded. All in favor? Thank you very much. I'll start with you, Councillor Yake. Any pecuniary interest?
No.
Andy?
None for me, thanks.
And how about you, Brian Milne?
No, sir.
Great. You'll see the minutes of the previous meeting from March 8th were approved by council on February 8th, were approved by council on February 21st as well. And we'll take it from there, and going into business arising from the minutes, we'll head to you, to the Director of Operations for the Malforce Outdoor Pool Open House. Over to you, Matt.
Yep, thanks, Chair McCabe. So the open house is going to be Wednesday, March the 23rd, from 5:30 till 7 o'clock. And it's going to be in person in the lower leisure hall of the Mount Forest Arena. And some of the communication, I guess, related to what'll be presented that we've had with the fundraising committee specifically is, you know, some of the concepts have amenities that aren't present in the current pool. So like things like sunshades and turf, those are things that they're presented as far as the concept. They may or may not be supported as far as the budget goes. So, but I think the three concepts that we're putting forward will give us lots of good ideas. And we're going to have a survey monkey and a survey that the community will be able to give us comment on.
That's good. Thank you, Matt. And are these, are you talking these other features like the turf and sunshades, are those going to be possible fundraisers? Is that what you're angling at there? Yeah, well, sorry. I see Mike's hand up. Feel free to jump in here, Mike.
I think the Director of Operations is politely trying to acknowledge that some of the amenities in the concepts will not happen unless they are fundraised for. I think that's the intent, or that has been the discussion with this group and with council over the years, is that enhancements, so things that are like a climbing wall, which we don't currently have at our pool, that would only come forward if it is fundraised for by the committee, or a community member says, hey, I want a climbing wall, I want my name on that climbing wall, I'll pay for it, kind of thing. So I think that's where we're at. And there was some guidance given in that direction with the fundraising committee, and I'm not sure, I won't say I'm not sure that that's necessarily been understood yet.
All right. It's kind of almost like the province, they'll build the hospital, but we'll put all the equipment inside, or the fundraisers will put the equipment inside. Dan, I saw your hand up there.
Comments there then. So when do we, or when do we get to the point where, you know, we know exactly what we're going to pay for, and fundraising knows exactly what they're going to do or raise money for? Like, I know we're having the open house and we haven't kind of finalized a concept yet, but at some point that line has to be drawn, right? So this is what has to be fundraised. This is what the municipality is going to pay for, so that we know exactly what our costs are going to be and they know exactly what theirs are going to be. So how far are we, I guess, until we get to that point?
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Dan. Like especially in the case of the fundraisers, in that committee, knowing what they're going to be fundraising for will go a long way for them. But Matt, And we have to have that separation as well. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Matt, go ahead.
Yep, thanks through you, Chair McCabe. Yeah, I agree that there is a point where I think what we're in the process of right now is soliciting consultation of what the community wants, but I think as staff, we know what council wants, which is basically to replicate what we have in Mount Forest. But we'll factor in, we'll have the input of the consultation with the public, and then staff will put forward a recommendation. And I mean, ultimately, Recreation Committee and council will decide on kind of what the pool is. But to your point, Member Yake, the fundraising committee probably needs to come up with a number that they're trying to attain. And we've put forward some ideas, but they haven't grasped at them yet.
Yep, go ahead, Dan, and then I'll go over to you, Brian.
Okay, so the fundraising committee, like, at some point they need to know, okay, we'll just to toss out a number, just say we need $100,000 of fundraising money here, right? So they have to be, like, they have to know that. And I guess that's where it's going to be, like, is there going to be all kinds of back and forth in regards to, you know, a climbing wall and turf and sand and benches and all that stuff? Are we going to get into a dispute as to what they're going to pay for and how much they want to pay for and how much they want to raise? That's my concern, is that quarrel or that decision will lead to a longer timeline.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be said out that we're actually just, the township is replacing what's there. And if they want X, Y, and Z for features, then that's what they're going to fundraise for, and they'll hopefully get some pricing for that. Because I think it's, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, it's it's up to the township to replace an amenity that's going to be decommissioned. And that's kind of where I think our buck stops, and that's where the fundraising begins.
Okay.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair McCabe. In regards to what the township is paying for, I note the public meeting, or in the public meeting notice, I note that both Southgate and West Gray have been graciously invited to attend and have representation there, which is entirely appropriate. And I guess this relates to fundraising. Are West Gray and Southgate, and maybe others, are they going to be asked to contribute to the pool? And if so, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm saying that's probably appropriate, but any funds raised from those municipalities, will it be contributed to the pool itself or to the fundraising campaign? I don't know if I explained that very well or not, but.
So you're saying if Southgate, West Gray put 10 grand all in, would that be going for the climbing wall, or would that go to the actual
pool?
The principle of building the pool?
Right. And I guess attached to that is, I'm not entirely clear, is there going to be a fundraising campaign to augment the township's money to replace the pool? Or is the township replaced? If nobody comes forward with another nickel beyond what the township has now, will the pool be replaced?
I'll let Andy or Mike jump in on that one.
I'm not clear on this.
No. Go ahead, Andy.
And I'm afraid I'm going to just add more mud to the water here.
Oh, that's okay. Any addition is helpful.
I think maybe this is the place to start the conversation, and maybe it's not. I don't know. But I think we do need to have some conversations, serious ones, about what we as the township and elected officials in particular, what we believe is the appropriate way to go about this. Like, there's also things like, you know, are we going to let naming rights for the pool be one of the fundraising items? Or are we going to dedicate change rooms to things? And then who is the beneficiary of that fundraising? Is that, you know, we're going to hand those rights over to the fundraising committee to generate those things, or is that something we're going to do ourselves? I think, you know, I totally agree with your point, Dan, about, you know, that there needs to be we need to draw a line and say, this is how much we're going to contribute. This is how much we need to fundraise. But I think we've got to consider these other things, and we've got to take the lead on that and hammer those things out before we get to that stage. Because I don't think it's fair to the fundraising committee if they're, and maybe this is an inappropriate way to do it, but if they're planning to fundraise with bake sales and we're saying, okay, we're going to offer up naming rights, well, it's a totally different ballgame. I think we've got to take the leadership to set the parameters around that and what our expectations of that fundraising is. And I don't know where we start that conversation. Maybe it's here.
I agree with the Mayor Lennox. There's a huge difference between a climbing wall and naming rights, and that's got to be spelled out. And to be fair to the fundraising committee, they got to have a goal and an amount in mind, I think, as well. And hopefully there is some contributions from our neighbors, but ultimately, yeah, we have to kind of, I guess, draw a line in the sand and say, here's what we're going to pay as a township and what the fundraising is going to pay for as well. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Steve. I think there's maybe some lessons that can be learned from the process for the community center itself. I was there, well, Dan was on the building committee there as well, and I don't know if anyone else here was on that committee, but weren't you, Dan? You were on that building committee, weren't you?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was some lessons there and how that process unfolded. And from my perspective, it seemed to work very well. So, you know, maybe maybe we need to have a look at that, how that was done. And I think it was accepted well, seemed to go well.
I think for some of that, no, I wasn't on the committee at all. And I think there's been some chat about this over the last couple of years, like when the facility is built, the fundraising dries up awfully quickly. And I think that is one lesson that we can learn from the Sportsplex and Malforce for sure is we've got to set our goals, get that, like I said, get a goal set for them, for ourselves too, and an amount and date and go from there. Matt, I saw you pop up and then I'll go to you, Dan.
Yep, no, I just popped up, Steve, so apologies.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you were, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the sports complex. I mean, if we'd have waited till all fundraising was complete, we may still not have a building. So, you know, it was decided at that time that we would move ahead and we would debenture and move ahead with the building. And that's exactly true. What you're saying, Steve, is that there was a fundraising committee and which was rolling along nicely, but almost the minute the building opened, you know, the donations stopped. And it's going to be, I don't want to put a negative tone on it, but you know, the times are tough right now for a lot of people and a lot of businesses, and it's going to be very tough to raise some of those dollars. And it's I don't know, is the municipality, and Andy, you might answer this question. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think that the municipality is willing to front the money for fundraising and hope that they get it back, because I don't think I'm not sure that'll happen in this day and age. So, I mean, there's got to be a real concern here is how much fundraising is going to be available to the group. And I don't, like I say, I don't want to put a negative tone on it, But
No,
it's
you're not.
going to be a difficult thing if they need to raise, I don't know, $500,000. If that's what they need, it's go. You know, I hope there's a good plan in place to make that happen.
Yeah, and it's not a negative comment, Dan. It's comments that have to be made and get us thinking. And like Mayor Lennox said, is maybe this is a good spot to start. We're on the rec committee, and this is the meeting for it, and have to kind of lay it out. Karen, I saw you jump in.
Yeah, when the new arena in Orangeville was built, I want to say now 15 years ago or maybe longer, they put the facility up, and then they hired a full-time staff at the town of Orangeville to be the fundraiser. And she didn't raise enough money in the first year to pay her salary, because when the building's up there and people are already paying admission to go in and, you know, buy stuff, they're not keen on donating to a building that's already there.
Yep, totally agree with you. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, through you, Chair McCabe, and it's probably more to Member Yake and Member Milne. What was the trigger as far as the donation amount that made sense where you proceeded with the project as it related to the Mount Forest Arena? Like, was it 20%? Was it 30% that you fundraised for, that all of a sudden this was a project that was going to go forward? Or was maybe this question is invalid?
I don't remember a number, a specific number, but I think, as I recall, the community made the notion or made the decision that we needed a new facility and we're going to build it. It had been stalled for quite a number of years, and the old facility was absolutely done. And we needed a new facility, and the community decided to forge ahead with it. And I hate to say it, but it was almost damn the torpedoes. And, you know, come on, community, we've decided to build this thing. Let's do it.
Like, bite the bullet and get on with it.
I think so.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I'd agree with that to a certain extent. I think, and I mean, we had the cooperation of Southgate, who donated $1 million. We knew that was coming. So that was obviously a big help. There was a committee, a fundraising committee put in place to look after, you know, things such as naming rights and that type of thing. And there was a commitment made. I don't know exactly what the number was, but there was a number tossed out that they were going to raise, and you know, that hit a roadblock, and they didn't do that. The biggest fundraiser that maybe carried on a little bit longer than after the building was built was the seat sale. People were interested in having their name put on seats, and whether it was businesses or people were buying them for family members or that type of thing, and that went on a little bit longer. But yeah, I just, if you make if the number's too big, and it's a lot of, Andy said it takes a lot of bake sales to come up with the money. So it's yeah, it's going to be a challenge no matter how we proceed.
So do we put it back from this committee to council and say, like, we need a kind of an answer on what the municipality is willing to build, and draw that line and say, here's what we're going to replace when the current pool is decommissioned, and if the ad hoc wants to add 3 items, then they'll have to fundraise for that.
I wonder, thanks, Steve. I wonder, or maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, because we haven't even decided what the concept is going to be, right? Maybe at the public meeting, you know, if people start saying, well, this is going to cost whatever, just whoa, we're not there yet. We need to decide as a community what we want. And once we've made that decision, put a number to it. And if the community's still with you, forge on. But if the number's too big, then community says, nope, we're not doing that. then it's got to come back and start cutting chunks out of it. At some point, you got to say, well, it's not even going to hold water, so we're not even going to do the project. Right?
And I think, Matt, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the concepts, all the three concepts are in the same ballpark money-wise. Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Chair McCabe, but yeah, they're all in the same budgetary concept, and council has approved some dollars to get a detailed design done, but certainly for the next 4 months, 6 months, it's all about just kind of soliciting public feedback. And yeah, I agree with what Member Milne is saying as far as, you know, letting this just play out.
I think if you start talking dollars at this point, you're just going to draw the battle lines and nothing's going to happen. If you let people decide what they want and then say to them, well, if that's what you want, this is what it's going to cost. Do you still want it?
And Mike always says that, like, anything can be built. It's
Well, absolutely, right?
whether the taxpayer will, you know, and we're all taxpayers, whether we'll bear that cost.
I mean, if you ask people what they wanted to spend on the arena, you wouldn't have half the facility you have there now.
Mhm.
But you asked the community what they wanted in terms of a facility, and that's what they wanted, and they were willing to pay for it. Drive on. That sounds kind of simplistic, but
Go ahead there, Andy.
Yeah, in principle, I agree with Brian on this. I'm not sure that when you ask the public what they want and what they're willing to pay for, you got to kind of set the parameters of that. So if we're expecting to cover a bunch of this expenditure with tax dollars, and frankly, I don't think there's an appetite in the community to do it unless we do cover some of it or a majority of it with tax dollars. We got to decide where that line is. What's the percentage that we're going to pay for? Are we prepared to pay, you know, go ahead tomorrow, so to speak, with a basic replacement strategy? That's kind of what we've talked about. But if that's not what we're prepared to do, then we need to be clear about what the expectation is so that the public can decide. And I this is where I totally agree with Brian. We need to spell out, okay, here's what we're proposing. Here's what it's going to cost. Are you with us? But I think we've got to set the framework first. You mean we've talked about it in the past? We'll replace what we have currently here today. Is that what we believe? You know, and I'm saying that rhetorically, but I think council does need to make that decision, draw that line firmly in the sand before we go to the next stage.
Yep, and I would agree with you. Like, that's what I said earlier, like when the amenity is going to be decommissioned, I think it's up to the township to replace that with something else. Go ahead, Mike.
So I like the sports complex, using it as an example. So Mayor Lennox, and I'm not trying to be adversarial, but the sports complex was a replacement of an arena. And so it has an ice surface. Well, that ice surface is bigger and has better boards and lots of other things that the old arena did. But to many people, that was a replacement of the ice surface because it had to be done and it was brought to modern standards. It has change rooms. The old arena had change rooms too. They were garbage, but they had change rooms. I spent time in those change rooms. The ones that got built were a replacement of those change rooms. Much larger, brought to a modern scale. So this is part of the challenge that we have when we have these conversations about the pool. We talk about, well, we're going to replace what we have. No, we're not. That's not the reality. We're going to replace what was built 50 years ago to a 2022 standard, which is completely different. Completely different. And with that is a price tag. These concepts have all come in at $5.5 million. Shocking numbers for most people when they talk about a pool that's going to get 4 months of use. But that's the reality that we're dealing with. And the replacement of the pool that we have now to a 2022 standard is $5 million. How much do we really anticipate getting fundraised of that replacement? When we're talking about, we're not adding a second pool, we're not adding a second deck, it's a pool. That's what we're building. So I think this concept, or the understanding of what replacing a 50-year-old pool with a current pool is a confusing concept to explain when we're talking about replacement. Because people know we're not going to basically duplicate exactly what was built 50 years ago, because we just can't. The change rooms have to be different. The lobby has to be different. There's accessibility requirements. The pool deck has to be different. All of those things have to be done. And we can't, they just have to be if we're going to build it. So
Yep.
I'm sure when they started out with the sports complex, the conversation was, well, we need to replace what we have and we need to bring it. But the dressing rooms got bigger. The ice surface got bigger. There's now a scoreboard above the ice. There's much more stands. All of those things had to be part of it, or else you just wouldn't do it. To Brian's point, why would we have just tied our hands to exactly duplicating the existing arena? It wasn't going to serve the purpose of the community going forward. So this is what we find ourselves in terms of the conversation. And maybe it's premature. I don't think it's premature for this group, and I don't think it's premature for council to start thinking about this, because at some point the fundraising committee and the community are going to say, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah, see, I don't think that's confusing at all. You put Mike in front of a public meeting and he says exactly what he just said, and away you go. Right? If they don't kill him, we got a new pool.
There you go.
Good chance I'm dragged through the parking lot by behind a car.
Oh, forget a new pool? You're willing to take it for the team. I know you are. I know you are.
Fires and everything.
Mike, we'll just have you come in virtually on that meeting. Go ahead, Andy.
Well, Mike may think he doesn't agree with me, but actually he does. Because that's what I was trying to get at, is that we've got to have a discussion about how far we're going to go with taxpayers' dollars. And if it's, let's say this pool is $5 million to replace to a 2022 standard, are we prepared to front $5 million? Is it $3 million? Is it $2 million? What is it? What is it we, as the the holders of taxpayers' dollars, are prepared to commit to this project? And what do we expect from the public? I think this will be a tougher
conversation. Sorry, Andy, sorry, go ahead.
Honestly, I think this will be a tougher fundraise than the arena was, because I think there's fewer people use it, and there's fewer people that will see that this is an important amenity in our community. Now, I think I know I've had this conversation with Mike before. I kind of, relate this to a poker game. The pool to me is kind of like the ante to get to the poker game. It's something our community needs to play the game. Are we prepared to ante up, I guess is the question. And how much?
So out of this conversation, Mike and Karen, can we get a question back to council saying what's the answer? Like, how much are, where are we putting our money where our mouth is?
I think through you, Chair McCabe, I think to Brian's point and to Matt's point, we've gone to the process of getting concepts. This is really the first time for the broader community to weigh in at all. Yep. So council needs to know that, right? Needs to have a sense of how this goes. Like if we host this meeting and nobody shows up, is that sending a message? I think it is.
Yep.
If we have host this meeting and 400 people show up, I think that sends a message too. So I think, I think council needs to understand that. Where is this on the priority list? How important, how quickly, how much? And all those, are part of what we're trying to gather as we go through these consultation process. It's not just about, oh, well, I like this color and I like this color, or we need this and don't need that. It's also about, what's the overall impact on the community? Who's paying attention? Who wants to be part of this? who wants to support it, and to what level. So that's part of what comes out of, I think, this community engagement. I think that's the hope, or at least it's my hope.
Yeah. If
And I
100
think
people,
that's the
if
whole
100
point of
people
the
show,
public consultation. Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Sorry, Brian. go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, if 100 people show up at the door wondering, where's that Gibbons guy? I want to talk to him. That gives you an answer too, right?
Bring the old car.
Yeah.
If you charged $100 a person and 200 people showed up, then you got 200,000 bucks in the pot to start with. No, I'm just trying to throw some ideas out.
Try again.
I'd redo that math too.
Actually, I liked her math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a clerk, not a treasurer, sorry.
Good thing.
But
No,
through you, Chair-
I think we're all sort of on the same page here. I mean, you've got to have the community coming along with you, regardless of where you go. And, you know, regardless of the numbers that show up, I think you'll get a sense from the people that do show up, you know, is this a project they're willing to support? And I said earlier, maybe we shouldn't talk about the dollars and cents, but you know, you don't want to get down into the weeds, but you do want to make sure people understand that this new pool, this new facility, 222 standards, is going to cost $5 or $5.5 million. And, you know, where does this fit into the 10-year capital plan kind of thing? I don't know. Does this hamstring the township for 10 years? They're not going to be able to build another wall in the township, or is this well within the means of, you know, your capital budget? I don't know. But I think people need to get a sense of the relativity here. What's this going to cost and how much it's going to get used and how long and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Yep, I totally agree with you. And I mean, it's, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, and yeah, through you, Chair McCabe, I would say like the pool is going to be, say, what we did in Arthur and what we did in Queen Street East, what we're going to do in Queen Street East. So two fairly big rehabilitation projects. Like that's kind of the context of what you can get for 5 million. So you can rebuild all of downtown Arthur, which wasn't a complete rebuild. It was basically just a surface replacement. And then Queen Street East, which is a complete rehab. That's what 5 million bucks buys you from a rehab standpoint, but we'll find out better next week when we get the tender in. Hopefully it'll probably be more than what we think, but
I hope you're right, Matt. I hope you're not using Karen's numbers, but
yeah. But that's kind of what 5 million buys you as far as rehabilitation projects. Two fairly significant rehabilitation projects.
and I think you have to put it in that context too. We can have this, or we have this kind of a deal. But yeah, it'll be an interesting talk at council once we are done this meeting, and this goes, our rec committee meeting goes to the next meeting. Brian.
I want to go back to what Mike said there earlier. He said something about, or was it Andy talking about the poker game? What were you alluding to there, Andy, in terms of the game? Can you expand on that a little bit? I think I know what you were talking about, but just expand a little bit more on that if you wouldn't mind.
Go ahead, Andy.
Okay, let me use a different example, and I'll play on for what Matt was just talking about. If I look at community benefit, rehabilitating roads is like light years ahead of more important than having a new pool, in my opinion. But is having a pool in our community sort of a minimum standard that's expected by the public? You know, is that, and I use the term an ante when you play in a poker game, you know, is that the minimum standard that is expected in a community like ours? I kind of suspect it is, but you know, the thought for me personally of spending $5 million on a swimming pool that's used by a few hundred people a year just seems completely bizarre. And that's the only way I can get around the idea of spending that kind of money on rebuilding a pool, is that this is sort of a minimum standard that is expected for a community of our size.
It might be interesting to, and I don't know who the developer is of the new subdivision on the south side of town there, but it might be interesting to talk to that developer and say, what or how much of a benefit to your business or your project here is a pool in town? And if that developer says, well, yeah, that's a pretty key piece that, you know, to try to sell houses, to say that there's a pool in town, a modern pool, then your next statement is, so how much are you willing to provide, right? It's a cost benefit thing, right? To the developer as well. I like your analogy and I don't disagree with you, but the numbers scare me too. He might say, well, yeah, it's worth something, but it sure as hell isn't worth $5 million. I don't know. It might be.
And frankly, I don't know how to evaluate that.
I don't know either. But the developer, if the developer if he's worth his salt, he'll know what it's worth to the community or to his business to try to sell those houses. No different than a hospital's valuable, right? A hospital and an arena and all the rest of it. But is a pool another one of those facilities or is it not? I don't know.
And hopefully we can find that out through this process too.
Yep.
I was just going to say, it'll be pretty interesting to see what the public consultation does on the 23rd, and like we said earlier, kind of take it from there and gauge the appetite from our own community and then the neighboring municipalities as well. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
And maybe to try and put a cap on it for now, going back to Dan's, Councillor Yake's original point, I think post that, yeah, council really needs to sit down and establish, yes, we're doing it. Here's the goal of the fundraising committee. Here's where we see the dollars that come from a Southgate or Westgate, where they go in the pot. I think we're absolutely need to be able to have that conversation right after we get a better sense of the community drive, and you know, maybe we won't find that out. I hope we do. It's difficult sometimes depending upon season and all those things. People are busy, but I think we need to go through the process from an engagement standpoint and see what it looks like. But the next step is as Councillor Yake's point, we need to establish some goals and what are the steps going to happen. What are our expectation out of the fundraising committee? What is our expectation to our neighbors that utilize the pool? All those things need to happen pretty quickly.
Yep.
I agree, and I think this is hopefully the first step of a big, well, not a big step, but that'll take us to the next big step. And then, yeah, we've fish or cut bait, as they say. And I know it seems like it's a little long ways off, but 23rd is coming up in a couple of weeks, and we'll get more answers then. And then that way it will be a better way to chart our course as well. Any other questions or comments from the open house? All right, great. Thank you for that. Good discussion. Moving on, there is no deputations here today. And we'll go on to the ad hoc committee updates. And this is from the February 8th, 2022 meeting. I have a recommendation moved by Councillor Yake and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milne, that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee receive for information the minutes of the February 8th, 2022 Malforce Aquatics Ad Hoc Advisory Committee meeting. That the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee recommend Ray Tout to be appointed as the committee treasurer for the Malforce Aquatics Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. I think that's where that ends. And with that, I will pass the floor over to you, Matt.
Yep. Yeah, nothing. Well, the exciting thing about that meeting was that now the committee is going to have a bank account. So it's appointing a local treasurer as far as a committee treasurer, and they'll have some autonomy as it relates to dealing with financial matters within the confines of what the policy suggests. That's kind of what I would say is the punchline of that one.
All right, thanks. And today I had to bow out of that early. Is it a 2-signature process for any checks that are cut?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Any questions or comments for Matt? All right, all in favor? Great, thank you. And keeping Matt on the hot seat here from the March 1st, 2022 Advisory Committee, I have a recommendation moved by Councillor Deputy Mayor Milne and seconded by Councillor Yake, that the Rec Parks and Leisure Committee receive for information the minutes of the March 1st, 2022 Mount Forest Aquatics Ad Hoc Advisory Committee meeting. I will pass that over to you as well, Matt.
Yep, yeah, as it relates to those minutes, it was largely a discussion about fundraising opportunities, and there was some discussion about, yeah, just fundraising opportunities, swag, and kind of what is planned for 2022. Really not a lot more than that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I know they want to get going on fundraising as well, and I think it leads to the conversation that we just had about the open house, that they need some direction as well, and they want to get going as well on the fundraising, but they have to know what they're fundraising for as well. So, any questions for from the committee for Matt? All right, bunch, sounds good. All in favor? Great, thank you. I have a report here, RLP 2022-002, award of the ice resurfacer. Recommendation that the Rec Park and Leisure Committee receive report RPL 2022-002, award for the replacement of the ice resurfacing machine. And further, that the committee recommend the Council of the Township of Wellington North award this project to Resurface Corporation at a cost of $92,700 plus applicable taxes. And further, that the committee recommend the Council of the Township of Wellington North authorize the Director of Operations or their designate sign any necessary agreements in order to make this purchase. And further, that the committee recommend the Council of the Township of Wellington North waive the requirement for a competitive process as detailed within the township's purchasing and procurement policy. And I'll say that was moved by Councillor Yake and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milne. And with that, I'll open the floor to both Matt and Tom. Go ahead, Matt.
Yep, thanks, Chair McCabe. I guess I would take a initial crack at it. I think we've had lots of good experience with Olympia. We have spare parts that are interchangeable. From a training perspective, it's easier if we have one piece of equipment or a similar piece of equipment branded between the two facilities, and that's kind of what we're asking for, recognizing it's not consistent with our procurement policy.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I think in the report we have had a long history with them, and it's nice to have a local company as well that can respond to any breakdowns or equipment replacement as well, just over in Elmira. Tom, do you have anything more to add for this?
No, I think Matt's hit it on the head. This year we did have an incident where during one of the first Patriots games, hydraulic hose broke on a Saturday night. They came up from Elmira. They worked till about 2 o'clock in the morning, got the machine fixed so we didn't miss any ice the next day, which I pat them on the back for that. They're pretty good with us that way. So that's why we look to this company.
Great, thank you. Yeah, with that, I'm going to open the floor to the committee. Go ahead, Brian.
Does Wellington North single source their snow removal equipment as well?
Go ahead, Matt.
When you say single source, what does that mean, Brian? Sorry.
Do you buy all your stuff from Viking? at the top end of town there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So that is traditionally what Wellington North has done, but now Viking is a part of Sourcewell, which is kind of a provincial purchasing group, and that will make us more compliant.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Matt or Tom? Go ahead, Andy.
Just wondering if there was any informal inquiries made of competitors for Olympia, just to make sure that they're continuing to be in a competitive position in the marketplace.
Either one of you can have a crack at that. Go ahead, Tom.
Through you, Chair. No, we didn't go to Zamboni's, the only other competitor that there is. They're out of Brampton. Their costs, I did check them on the internet. Costs are roughly the same, maybe a little bit more for them. They're a different style of machine. A little further away for us to service our equipment. We take blades to them on a regular basis. Once per month, we'll take a trip to Elmira with blades from both Malforce and Arthur. Takes roughly 2 hours if we were to start to travel to Brampton. Adds a lot more travel time in for us. So that's kind of the way we went, looked at resurf ice. Pricing was good. The equipment, the laser level and all the stuff. Some of that equipment is already in existence in our building. That's what was purchased years ago. We'll still be using that stuff that's on the wall in the arena.
Go ahead with a follow-up there, Andy.
Just wanted to say that although I did ask that question, I am supportive of the process. I just was wondering if we'd done that investigation just as a way to support the decision that we're proposing here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, through you, Chair. McCabe. Yeah, I don't think we feel that the pricing we're getting is out of sorts.
And imagine if it was, you'd probably might go to Zamboni for a competitive price. Dan, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, just through the discussion, I'm satisfied with the purchase. I want to be sure that we can back up the purchase by circumventing the procurement policy, because we sometimes take some heat when we do that, not in other cases. So as long as we have a good argument and a good defense for doing it, then I'm okay with it.
Right, great. Thanks, Dan. Brian.
Thank you, Steve. But to Dan's point, unless you go through the competitive process, you have no argument. You have none. All you've done is a single source. You've went out and bought the machine you wanted. Unless you go through the process, you've got no argument. And I don't disagree that Olympia is probably the best machine for Mount Forest and Arthur. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. I'm always a little uncomfortable with these single source purchases just because we've dealt with them forever. They're great people. It goes on and on and on. You can convince yourself of anything, but be careful.
Yeah, and I think it's like this isn't we're not going to write the check tomorrow, Brian. I think this will go towards or to our council, and we'll probably have that discussion there as well, and flush that out.
Okay.
I expect that's what will happen. I have just one little quick question. Sorry, I can wait. Go ahead, Matt.
No, yeah, through you, Chair McCabe. Certainly these meeting minutes go to council, but if this committee feels uncomfortable, that's something as staff we need to hear.
Yeah, and if when we call the vote here shortly, if it's uncomfortable, we'll find out right away. I just have one quick, and it's I guess more, I wouldn't say fundraiser, but maybe offset a little bit of the cost, or maybe get some revenue generated. And remind me, because I haven't been in the arenas or haven't seen the Zamboni, sorry, for about 2 years. Is there advertising on the ice resurfacers now? And if not, what's the process where we could sell advertising on the sides and the tops? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Malforce Advertising does have one of our local realtors on the side.
Yeah, I thought so.
They signed a contract, I think it's 3 years ago. I think it runs out this summer. The Arthur machine has Dave Fletcher Auto Body on the top. He's the one that painted it.
Okay. Okay. Maybe we can get some advertising on the sides side of it as well. Just something to look for or look at. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking more about what Brian has said in regards to the procurement policy, which, you know, certainly makes sense. I mean, if you don't go through the process, you don't have a defense, or you don't have an argument. So I know, I don't know, I guess, Tom, you've said that you've looked at the other one, they're probably in the same ballpark. Is it easier, you know, is it much more work to go through the procurement policy and get a quote or a tender from them, just so that we can make sure everybody's pencil is sharp? I mean, it's got me thinking on this right now.
That would involve putting out a tender, then I would imagine. Sorry, Matt, you could probably answer Dan and then my question.
Yep, yeah, through you, Chair McCabe. Like, there's two options, I think. Sourcewell, which again is one of those government kind of procured things, has Zamboni on it, or we could put out a tender. Those would be the options if this was defeated at this meeting.
All right. Any other comments or questions regarding this recommendation? Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Just a question. I mean, I recognize the value associated with having, you know, local supplier, consistent machine, parts inventory, service response. You know, I recognize those are really important things from an operational perspective. Certainly when I'm buying a piece of equipment, I consider all those things myself. But I don't have to go through a formal tender process either. I guess my question is there, you know, if we were to go RFP or, you know, RFQ type of approach, is there a way that we can factor those things into it and still meet the requirements of our purchasing policy?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair McCabe, and to you, Mayor Lennox. The procurement policy is a policy of council. So that's a policy that the 5 members of council own. And yeah, like, there is options available as far as like sole sourcing is an option, but is it challengeable? Possibly. I don't think, my belief is that you have to be over $350,000 before it probably is something that people would challenge you on, but that's something that probably I'm way out of my realm commenting on, as far as, you know, if there's someone who lives in our community that works for Zamboni, they're going to have a different opinion than I am going to have, right?
Yeah, and I think we got to remember that like, this is just a recommendation to council. We're not actually cutting the check tomorrow. This will go to our next meeting and with input from this meeting here, and then it's up to, like Matt said, the 5 people that are on council to go with this single source or to ask for a formal RFP. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of this recommendation? Those opposed? Great, thank you, Brian, and thank you, that passes. And we'll take this to the council in our next council meeting. And thanks for that good conversation as well. Moving on to OPS 2022-009, changes in recreation, Schedule A. I have a recommendation that the Rec Park and Leisure Committee receive report OPS 2022-009, being a report on proposed changes within the rec team. And further, that the committee recommend council of the Council of the Wellington North, Township of Wellington North, excuse me, direct staff to create a new full-time permanent role within recreation and begin recruitment immediately. And further, that the committee directs staff to draft a letter of thanks to Martin's TLC for the chair to sign on behalf of the Rec, Park and Leisure Committee. I will say that that was moved by Councillor Yake and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milne. And with that, I will pass it over to you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair McCabe. So this report is, we've had a long-standing relationship with a local contractor who has done yard maintenance in Malforce. And within the report, the amount of money we spend each year is there. And the recommendation is that it's going to be a service level increase as far as it's going to be. Yeah, it's more money than we have spent previously. But it also will mean that we'll be dealing with the flower beds, dealing with the trail maintenance, those kinds of things. And that's kind of what the recommendation is consistent with. Certainly as staff, we considered the idea of just going out and getting another contractor. So that's kind of what's before you as far as a recommendation, and certainly open to answering questions.
I'll open the floor to the committee. I have, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Well, first of all, I don't want Matt to think I'm picking on him today, because I'm not. I'm not trying to anyway. But I would challenge your numbers a little bit in terms of what you've spent and what you're proposing to spend, because what you've spent isn't just wages. That cost from Martin's includes the more maintenance, fuel, all the rest of it, transportation, moving it around.
No.
Whereas, and maybe that's already factored in here. I don't know. It doesn't look like it is, but maybe it is. But I think you need to be, or at least everybody has to have their eyes wide open, that you're not just going to hire somebody and the grass is going to be cut. You got to buy a mower, you got to buy a trailer. Now you need a pickup to pull the trailer. It just goes on and on and on. I would rather see some kind of process to see if there is a contractor that could do this service and the enhancements as Matt talks about. And then compare that to actually hiring a new employee. But that's just my opinion.
All right,
Thank you,
great.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, thanks, Brian. Matt, do you have?
Yeah, I can respond through you, Chair McCabe. And anyway, that's a very honest comment as far as there's going to be, there's going to be equipment charges and stuff like that to keep this person having a chainsaw and working in a lawnmower. I think we have it figured out as far as we're getting rid of a lawnmower that we would give them, but 2 or 3 years down the road, will we be asking for a lawnmower like a 60-inch deck? Absolutely. So no, fair comment. And a negative to the report I wrote. Thanks for pointing that out, Member Milne. Don't laugh that hard though.
Oh, now I feel bad.
No, you don't.
Okay, no, I don't.
But no, I think that's a very reasonable comment, and it's something I missed. So it's a fair comment.
No, and it is, Brian, you're right. You got to, again, weigh everything out. And read the report and see if there's anything more to it. So this full-time person would obviously take care of that. And what kind of equipment do we have for that person to use to maintain everything that TLC has maintained right now, kind of going in the same vein as what Brian was talking about? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I think the tractor that council, or the sidewalk machine that council approved yesterday, the 2015, 2016 Kubota, we would use as it has a mow deck, but yeah, in 2 or 3 years, it's gonna need to get replaced, so. But Tom will say something smarter than I can.
We'll see. No, go ahead, Tom.
No pressure, Tom.
Oh, thank you. I don't think I can outdo you, Matt. No, with hiring a person that can come work in the arena in the wintertime, that's going to help to cut down on our reliance on trying to find competent part-time staff to work within the building. If they're out, we took over down in Arthur a few years ago, probably 8-9 years ago. We started cutting our own grass. I find we do a better job because we can do it when we want to do it. They have a schedule. They come around and do it once a week. If we need to do the ball diamonds, which we do in Arthur right now on Monday, and we have to do them again Friday in the month of May or month of June, we go do them. When you have a contractor, that's done once a week.
Right.
So service level gets enhanced a little bit. There's other stuff, like Matt said, the trails, our flower beds, and we have a lot of them in Mount Forest. That would all come back to us, and we would look after that stuff. Yeah, and a trailer and a pickup truck. We have the pickup truck. I don't know if we need a trailer because we're in town. Tractor can have a slow moving vehicle sign on hazard lights. It can be driven around in town across town. But yes, as Matt said, we will need a new tractor in a few years probably. We did the same thing in Arthur. We started with an old used tractor from the works department, got a few years out of it, and then got a better one, which we're running right now.
And then we have the added benefit of that person, whoever this full-time person is, of working all year round with us as well. Any other questions or comments? Yep, go ahead, Andy.
So my question is kind of along a similar line to Brian's. I understand we have the mower and so on, but what about some of the other, and I honestly, I don't know what was used by Martin's TLC, but I mean, did they use aeration? Did they do aeration? Did they use a sprayer for weed control, fertilizer application? Do we have all that stuff? And if we don't, what kind of cost is associated with it? And then maybe I didn't read the report carefully enough, but the offsetting component of using less part-time staff in the winter by having this full-time person, I didn't see that reflected, but maybe that's just my oversight.
Matt or Tom, do you want to bite on this? Go ahead, Tom.
I think it reflects in the wage. It talks about wages in there. And we didn't put in there about the staff, but with a new schedule in the wintertime, we'd be able to utilize this person in both Mount Forest and Arthur to reduce some hours by part-time staff. As far as aerators, Martin's didn't do any spraying. They rolled, but we roll now in Arthur. We'll rent a machine. We aerate. We rent a machine from Broadline, so we would do all that stuff. We don't, and maybe that's something we look at in the future because we're both towns are now doing it. Maybe we look at our own roller or our own aerator in the future to compare the price between renting and
share between towns.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And yeah, that's probably something we'll have to look at. Might as well, again, weigh out the cost of renting the aerator and roller or whatever other equipment that's kind of specialized versus buying it outright and going from there to share it within the township. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? I have the recommendation on the floor, and I will call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Thanks, Brian. Thank you. Moving on, we'll have the we're almost right on schedule too. This is good. Items for consideration, you'll see the letters of correspondence. We have a recommendation moved by Councillor Yake and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milne that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee receive for information the letters of correspondence with the Arthur Seniors Center and Damascus Hall dated February 23rd. Over to you, Matt.
Yep, thank you, Chair McCabe. So these were the letters that were sent, which is basically just that as of March 1st, things are opening up. The senior center is going to start paying rent. The senior center is going to require vaccination passports, which I think that's within their realm. And then Damascus Hall is open up and it's not going to require. Yeah, it's gonna exist under provincial health regulations. Like, I don't think there's screening requirements. It's sort of a passive screening thing.
Right. Alrighty. Any questions or comments on those letters sent out to the two facilities? Great, thank you. I will call that. All in favor?
Can't support that.
Okay, good to have you back on board. Thanks, Brian. And then in the same vein, we have other letters of correspondence to Malforce Lions Club, the Township of Southgate, and the Township of West Grey. And I have a recommendation moved by Deputy Mayor Milne and seconded by Councillor Yake that the Rec, Park and Leisure Committee received for information the letters of correspondence with the Malforce Lions Club, Township of Southgate, and the Township of West Grey, also dated all on February 25th, 2022. And excuse me, Matt, I'll pass this over to you.
Yep, thanks, Chair McCabe. Those letters are just the ones that kind of inform for the March 23rd event. So those have all been sent out and hopefully they get distributed to the service club and the councils, just to try to promote awareness for people to come out March 23rd.
Yep, great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Yep, go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Steve. Is there any traditional back and forth with Minto Township on these types of things or no?
Not that I'm aware of. They have a lot of their own facilities, but
Does Minto have a pool?
Sorry?
Does Minto have a pool?
Yes.
Or where is it at? In Harrison?
Ariston, there's one for sure.
Oh, okay.
And
All right.
and Palmerston as
I
well.
was gonna say.
Oh, okay.
Kristen and Palmerston, yes.
All right. And I have
Yeah.
another question if I could. If
Yeah,
someone
please go
could,
ahead.
if someone could just remind me, how much did West Grey contribute to the arena complex?
I wasn't on that committee. Dan, maybe you can answer that.
I can tell you, but he knows that it was zero. Maybe we could get $1 million from Southgate for the pool. How's that for a suggestion?
Are you inhaling, Mr. Yake, or not?
Just wondering if you take that back. There's precedent been set.
Precedent has been set, but generally for frozen water, not liquid water. Try again.
It's all water.
I'll let you guys take that off air, but I always think, there's no point in having neighbors if you're not going to use them. So.
Exactly. And we love our neighbors.
So do we. I don't covet them, but any other questions or comments? All right, I'll call this recommendation. Oh, go ahead, Andy.
Sorry, it's just being a smart ass. We all like Wilder Lake too.
Or did.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about contributions there.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on, we have the Malforce Lions Pet Value Guide Dog Walk, and I have a recommendation here moved by Councillor Yake and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milne That the Rec Parks and Leisure Committee received for information the letter of correspondence from the Malforce Lions Club regarding the pet value guide dog walk, and further that committee endorsed this event being held at Lion Bill Moody Playground and Park on May 29th, 2022. Tom, I'll pass this over to you.
Thank you, Chair Milne. This letter came through to me. I thought it should come through to this committee. I had never heard of this. Lived here all my life. I didn't know they did a little event down at Murphy's Park. They're changing locations. It's a good event, and I know the Lions have had service dogs in this town before for a person that lived here. I just think it's a great idea, and it's nice to see that they're moving to the Bill Moody Park, because he was a person that was involved with the service dogs when he was alive. So just a good idea, and it's nice to know that they're doing this.
Yeah, and I had no idea either, Tom, about it, and I think it's a great cause, and it's worthy, and they've got the track there to walk around, so should be good. Should be a good event for them. Any
just so you know, they're serving hot dogs that day too. So
might just have to show up with my dog. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. We'll go to the round table. I have nothing new or new business to add. I will go to our friends from Southgate.
No, I'm quite satisfied with the way things are going.
Great, good. Mayor Lennox.
I have nothing further at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yake.
I just wanted to comment on just quickly on the comment on the discussion about the pool. You know, it's really something that we need to move forward with. There's been a lot of time and money already invested in this project, and we just, you know, they've got a good committee there trying to move forward, and we really do need to kind of make it happen, or make some decisions so that everybody knows what we're doing. But I was happy with the discussion. There was lots of good content, and it may or may not help the final decision, but let's get it moving.
Yeah, I think you hit a good point there, Dan, as well as, and I always go and look at the Arthur Optimists. We kind of laid down the groundwork for them, told them here's the parameters of what can or cannot be done for the splash pad, and kind of got out of their way and let them do their fundraising. And I know this is a bigger bite than the splash pad, but yeah, I think it's in the same vein. Go ahead there, Andy.
Yeah, I agree with both of your comments, Chair McCabe and Councillor Yake. But I think this is a very different project from the splash pads that we've done before, in that we're not adding new amenity, we're replacing an existing one, and it's a much different scale. You know, we've had these fundraising committees that the service clubs have helped lead, that have done a fantastic job on the splash pads. But this is a very different beast in my estimation. And I think it's going to require more leadership from us as the elected officials to lay the groundwork and the parameters around how to get to where we want to go. And it's, I think we're going to have to, I'm looking for the right word, but we're going to have to set the table a little bit more to help those committees determine what they can and can't do and what's possible. And we all have to understand who's playing what role, and we all have to do our part.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I think we'll have a good idea, hopefully, on the day after March 23rd of what the public is looking for, what they have the appetite for, and start laying down the ground rules, or as you say, start setting the table and make sure everyone knows what roles they're playing to make this a success. Any other, Tom, I'll go to you. Any other questions? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I do actually. I'm bringing something up here for Matt. Mandy, if you could just pull that up on the screen for me. she's my savior. She's doing some IT for me because I've never shared on the screen before. We've started some preliminary discussions about office space at the township office. They're a little bit tight down there, so we're looking at some things at the Malforce Sports Complex. And what you see here in front of you right now is a picture of the main lobby. What we're looking at possibly doing is moving the vending machines over to, from there, Mandy, over to there. And then in that area where the vending machines are, we're looking at a couple of desks, 2 desks, office space, and a reception area at the front that would be utilized by our admin support. So people coming in would have that person right there. Questions, payments could all be made there. There would be 2 spaces for more of our staff and get more people out of the Kenilworth office and into this sports complex. This is just in the infancy stages. We're going to meet in the next couple of weeks with the design people and go through some other stuff. We have some concerns and some questions about that. So it's just to bring this to light for you. Mandy, if you go down to the other screen, like you had it. This is the upper leisure hall. We're looking at 1 new office in there. At the current time, we talked about a couple of other ones, but right now it would be 2 desks and a large office just as you go in the door to the right. And then that upper leisure hall would still be utilized for meetings and wouldn't touch anything else in there. All in the preliminary stages. Mike just asked if I would touch on it here because I've been involved with the planning for it. And then we'll bring it back to this committee and then to council when we have some decisions on it.
Good deal. This is neat, and might as well use the space while we can. If we can rejig some of the areas and then put some walls up and make some more room and alleviate some of the folks down in the Kenilworth office, and then actually have people right there accessible to the public coming in to rent, to pay, or any inquiries. It's a great idea, I think. Matt, I saw you jump on here. Do you want to add anything to this?
No, Chair McCabe, I think Tom covered it all, but certainly open to answering questions.
Any questions from the committee at all? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. And then Matt, I will ask you if you have any roundtable questions, concerns, or issues.
Nope, nothing from my end.
All right, well, that's great. Well, thank you very much. So now we're going to go into our closed session, and I think, is Karen still on here? Yeah, good. I think I can just read this recommendation as it's written to go. Okay. So we're going into a closed session. The meeting is closed pursuant to section 239 -2 of the Municipal Act 2001, specifically B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. I have a recommendation moved by Councillor Yake and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milne that the Rec, Parks and Leisure Committee of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North go into a meeting at 5:17 p.m. That